Hello everybody, welcome back to another video for the day. Now we're going right into r/talesofneckbeard, but beforehand be sure to like the video, and during the video if you happen to see something you would like to discuss, leave a comment down below, and afterwards consider subscribing to the channel and becoming part of the notification squad by hitting that good old taco bell. Alright, let's get right into that lovely content. Let's go! Our first story comes to us from username Bunnable. My first encounter, Skelebeard. Hey everybody, it's me, your girl. There was some fun talks about card games in the comments of my last story, and it reminded me of my very first neckbeard encounter when I was just a wee bitty bun. We're talking way back, middle school, 7th grade, age 12. So when I was in middle school, I was a bit of an odd duck. Like I mentioned, I've been into anime since I could functionally understand movement on a television screen, and I've always read at least a few levels above my grade average. And while my family was supportive of my interest, someone had to buy me all those books and rent VHSs from Blockbuster, they were also highly confused by them. I'm the youngest girl amongst my siblings, sandwiched in the middle of two rowdy boys, so I often got lost in the shuffle. Add to that my lack of athletic interest in my very sports-oriented family, as well as my early achievements in English and writing, and my family was at a bit of a loss as to what to do with me. I had a few friends at my school, but I had recently moved districts and was basically having to build a social circle from scratch. I didn't acquire my bubbly, outgoing attitude until late into 8th grade, where for some reason I just realized being shy was counterproductive and exploded with confidence. So for the first few months at this new school, I spent most of my free time with my nose in a book. The few friends I did have were also the shy, quiet types, so there wasn't much in the way of after-school meetups or weekend playdates. My mother was starting to get worried that I was lacking in extracurriculars, bolstered by my older sister applying to colleges and both my brothers already enrolled in 3 sports each. She encouraged me to find something to occupy my time after classes had ended. Enter Skelebeard. Skelebeard was a boy in my grade who also happened to be on my bus because he lived in my neighborhood. He was so skinny and pale you could basically see every one of his gangly white bones. Essentially, he was a skeleton with skin stretched over it, hence the moniker Skelebeard. To add to this boy's odd appearance, he had thick Coke bottle glasses in scratch black plastic frames that looked as if he had gotten into a fight with a mad alley cat and had thrown his glasses in defense. His hair was pitch black and wiry, always held concrete stiff by an ungodly amount of gel. His nose was thin and his ears were large, and he constantly wore khakis and oversized t-shirts that hung off his bony frame like a sheet on a ghost. And yes, when he could get away with it, he wore a fedora. He was, being only 12, a proto-neckbeard in the pupil stage. So, like I said, Skelebeard was on the same bus route as me, and he always made it a point to sit within a 2-seat radius of me. His stop was before mine, so it was easy enough for him to notice that I had gotten on the bus in the morning with 2 brothers, but went home alone. After a few weeks of recon, he decided to strike up a conversation. One day on the bus ride home, the ghoul boy sat down beside me. It was a very odd occurrence because in general the after-school bus was pretty empty as many kids in our neighborhood participated in post-class activities, so I almost never had to share a seat. He introduced himself. He already knew my name, which should have been a red flag, but my brothers were the new jocks on campus, and I just figured he'd heard about me through them, and asked me about my interests. At the time, I had one of the Star Wars Extended Universes books sat in my lap, and a few small anime and sci-fi pins on my backpack, so he struck up a conversation about that. It was nice having someone to talk to me about my interests and in a knowledgeable way, so I was fine with chatting with him. After a bit, he asked me if I had found any clubs or activities I wanted to join at school yet, and I told him nothing had really struck an interest yet. He told me that I was in luck because he was in a club that was looking for members and he thought I would be a great fit. I asked for more information and he told me it was a gaming club, specifically for card games. Oh, so you like Yu-Gi-Oh, I asked, or do you mean like Go Fish? No, you silly thing, he scoffed. We don't play such trivial games for children. We partake in much more civilized and mature games. Though I was a bit miffed at his response, I enjoyed collecting Yu-Gi-Oh cards because it was one of the few hobbies my brother didn't mind doing with me, but I didn't want to seem like a baby, so I agreed to ask my mom about it that night. He left the bus with a smug grin on his face and bowed like some guy in a period drama to me through the window as the bus pulled away. I was mortified the whole way home, but I was true to my word and asked my mom if I could try for a club the next day. She was thrilled that I wasn't going to turn into some weirdo recluse after all and eagerly agreed. So I the next day put my hair up in the cutest pigtails possible, donned my nicest cardigan, and went to school ready to join a club. Skelebeard met up with me at my locker after the last bell. I don't know how he knew which locker was mine because his class group's locker were nowhere near mine, and offered to walk me to the club room. I thanked him for the escort, but turned down the offered arm as I didn't like to be touched. He looked a little disappointed, but accepted my decision and put his hands in his pocket as we walked. The room luckily wasn't very far, and he opened the door for me and announced in a loud voice that the 2 of us had arrived. I had only taken about 3 steps into the room before I was hit by the wall of stank. The poignant scent, pubescent BO, and way too much Axe body spray washed over me like a wave at low tide. My nose crinkled and my eyes started to water, but my mama didn't raise me to be rude, so I sucked it up and plastered a smile on my face. Like I said, I shared a bathroom with my 2 sweaty athlete brothers, so it's not like I was a stranger to the little boy stank. And I do mean boy stank, as in it was only boys in that room. I was the sole female in the whole place, the club supervisor and 8th grade history teacher in his late 30s who tried way too hard to be the cool teacher, welcomed me to the club and asked me how long I had been playing. That depends, I said, still in the dark about what this club was even about. What are we playing? We are playing Magic the Gathering, milady, Skelebeard said, pulling his fedora out of his bag as school was now over and he was allowed to wear it. It's truly a gentleman's game, but fear not, I'm sure one of such refined tastes such as yourself will be able to pick it up with only the barest of difficulties. I had never heard of this game, but I did like the idea of magic in general, so I agreed to stay and try. The supervisor, let's call him Mr. H for history, was a pretty cool dude, and after I admitted I had no idea what was going on, he eagerly spent the rest of the club session showing me the ropes while the boys played with each other. Mr. H had some of those free starter decks that they hand out at game stores, and he helped me look through them and explained how they worked so I could start to build my own deck. I decided I liked white and blue. Even at 12, I was picking cards by aesthetic first and playstyle second, and I picked up the rules fairly quickly. I lost my first bout with Mr. H, but I held my own pretty well, and he gave me the go-ahead to try against the other club members at the next session. He let me keep the cards I'd used because they were meant for new players that joined the club anyway, and so far I was the only person that had shown up without a deck. At the end of the club, I practically skipped out the door, clutching my new hobby in my hands like I had just won first prize in the county fair. The other club members clambered after me, surrounding me with questions as we walked in a big herd towards the exit of the school. They asked my name and my grade, what deck I picked, and if I liked it, and would I be coming to the next club session in 2 days. I happily said that I would be, pleased as punch as that all these new people wanted to be my friends. Sure, they were all smelly dudes, but that's no basis for judging people, right? As we go outside, Skelebeard offered to take me home since we lived in the same neighborhood. I thanked him, but turned down the offer because I had already been added to the carpool my brothers took for the day. Skelebeard did not like that one bit. I can't allow such a thing, he said, shaking his head like there was water trapped in his ears. A delicate little thing like you stuffed into a car with all those sweaty, knuckle-headed brutes. Imagine what they might do. Actually, I preemptively called shotgun, so there won't be any stuffing on my part, I said, confused by as to what this guy could possibly be so concerned about, and also both my brothers and someone's mom will be there, so I don't think anyone is going to try anything more than fighting me for the radio control. You'd be much better off if my mother and I just took you straight home though, he insisted. Sorry, Skelebeard, I said, noticing my older brother waving at me from the middle of the group of guys in jerseys across the parking lot with his stick. We lived in a big area for sports, so the middle and high school had all sorts of sports fields and arenas within walking distance. My mom doesn't know your mom, and she's already arranged to go home in that car. Maybe another time. I waved at the group of Magic Club members and then hurried over my siblings, thinking nothing of it. But when I looked back, Skelebeard was glaring at my big brother something fierce. I don't know what he thought it would do. My brother was easily almost 6 foot in 8th grade, and the hockey team loving called him Penalty Pete because of the amount of fights he got into on the ice. He's a sweetie when he wants to be, but unfortunately he would rather be in butthole. So yeah, I don't know what the skeleton thought he was pulling trying to intimidate my meathead brother, but whatever, it was obviously didn't work, seeing as my bro simply pat my shoulder as I got to him before saluting and glaring at would-be Beard with an exaggerated wink with all of his hockey buddies mimicking and a laugh. Look, all dudes are buttholes and I can't be held accountable for that. Skelebeard gave a great irritated huff and stomped off to a waiting car. I felt a little bad about it, but I just assumed that all guys mess with each other like that. It's how my brothers and their friends always mess with me and my sister, so I figured it was just a guy thing and forgot about it. We all got into one of the hockey kids' mom's SUV and puttered off home. My younger brother ended up in the seat right behind me and asked about my club, and I showed him my cards excitedly. He told me it looked weird and girly, so it's perfect for you, and I got a few different permutations of that from the other guys in the car. Not exactly a glowing review, but still a better reaction than some of the things I brought up as interest got. I got much the same reaction from my mom that night when explaining it to her. She had no idea what I was talking about, but if it got me an extracurricular and some friends, then she was all for it. She took me to Walmart that night and bought me some more boosters, and I was pleased as punch. I spent the rest of the evening sifting through cards and trying to build a better deck. I eagerly showed Skelebeard what I'd put together the next day on the bus and asked him what he thought. Yes, this is a decent enough beginner deck. he said smugly, barely looking through even half the cards. "But you'll like how big boys do it tomorrow. Try not to be too intimidated. We'll be sure to start you out with other low-level players and move you up as you improve." This comment left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth, but I figured it was like any other competitive thing where you had to move up in the ranks as you gain skill. Sure enough, come club time the next day, I sat in front of a 6th grade boy while a few of the longtime players looked on. Luckily for me, despite being shy, I never had stage fright and I was perfectly fine playing with an audience. My opponent looked very nervous though. He kept eyeing the other guys and checking with them before making a move. I figured it was just because he was also new and didn't stress over it, as I also had to take a couple of good minutes before I made my own card choices. Oddly enough, even though this kid was going through so much effort in making his moves, he lost to me in glorious fashion. I was ecstatic that my first real match was such a resounding victory, and my opponent also seemed very happy that I had won, shaking my hand and congratulating me. It was a little weird that someone was so happy with losing, but I figured it was all just for fun anyway, so there was no need to get mad about a loss. How wrong I was. The next 3 weeks played out the same way. The Magic Club met every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and every day I would have a different opponent. Always a nervous 6th grader who I would soundly beat, followed by bountiful praise from the onlooking boys. Every club day, Skelebeard would offer me a ride home, and every time I would turn him down to go home with the hockey carpool. He had gotten more and more insistent with his advances and tried several strategies. He tried to keep me talking and trick me into just getting into his mother's car with him. He tried to get me to call my mom to ask her permission, even offering his own phone when I told him I didn't have one. It culminated with him physically grabbing it, holding my arm, and dragging me towards his car, which had my brothers rushing over and separating him from me. I'm small and I don't like to be touched, and my brothers get very protective when they see me uncomfortable. It was clear they wanted to fight Skelebeard, but I just wanted to leave before we all got in trouble. It took some convincing, but they agreed to let him go, but it was far from over. Now, me and my siblings fight like wet cats usually, but we can rally around each other with the best of them. After the grabbing incident, my brothers didn't want me to go back to the Magic Club, but I insisted that Skelebeard was usually fine and the rest of the club was always so nice. One bad apple shouldn't spoil the bunch, right? My older sister came up with a compromise. If I really liked this game so much, then we could find another place for me to play with a safer atmosphere. I agreed to give it a go. The next day, my brother stood guard over me on the bus ride to school, glaring daggers at the fuming Skelebeard the whole time, so the kid had no chance to even talk to me. They even enlisted a few of the hockey kids in my grade to walk with me between classes that day just in case he tried to pull something. Touching but embarrassing. That day, instead of heading to the buses, I went to car pickup and my older sister was waiting for me. She had one of her theater friends with her who apparently also played Magic and a new shop that was having its weekly casual play day. I was very excited to try some of my strategies against some new opponents outside of my usual cycle of 4 6th graders. I was like a kid in a candy shop when we got there. My sister's friend lent me one of her playmats and sat me at a table next to her, and we waited for opponents. To say I was decimated would be an understatement. With growing horror, I realized that I was not nearly as good at this game as I thought I was. I didn't even have a good grip on what half of my cards did. In fact, some of the things I thought my cards did were completely wrong. I didn't know what was happening, and I could barely take a single point off my opponents. I didn't know I was supposed to tap mana to use it. I thought it was just worked as long as it was there. It was a disaster. After a few losses, my sister's friend took a break from playing and coached me through a few matches. My opponents were also a wealth of good advice, which I appreciated, but I still left the shop with a sour pit of betrayal and disappointment in my gut. How could this have happened? Why didn't my friends correct me when I did something wrong? It was like nobody was watching me play. I was so confused and I needed answers. The next day, instead of eating lunch in the library like I usually did, I went to the cafeteria and hunted down one of the 6th graders I usually played against. I cornered him outside the doors and demanded answers. Luckily, I still had one of my hockey bodyguards tailing me, so this kid was scared enough to give me a real answer. It turns out he and the other 3 6th grade boys had been ordered by the older members of the club to play me and purposely lose. The other club members thought that if I lost, then I would leave the club. My school was big on extracurriculars, of course, but if you weren't a club, sport, or anything like Boy Scouts where participants were supposed to be of the same gender, you needed at least one boy and one girl to keep your status as a club. Like I mentioned before, I was the only girl in the Magic Club. Without me, they would be shut down. I was furious and insulted. Skelebeard had used me and the rest of the club thought so little of me as a competitor that they thought I would leave if I wasn't constantly handed wins. If they had just come out and said, "Hey, we need you to be in this club so we don't get shut down," I would have been fine with it. I knew then that I needed to hear it from Skelebeard himself. He was supposed to be my friend, and if he wanted to stay that way, then he better have a darn good answer for all this. I waited at my locker after the last bell for him to show up and walk me to club. When he did, I cut right to the chase. Skelebeard, we need to talk about Magic Club, I said, folding my arms over my chest and refusing to move until I got my answers. Yes, dear, Skelebeard simpered like he was talking to a child. We're going there right now. We aren't going anywhere until you answer my question, I said firmly, shaking my head at him. Is it true that you're making the other throw matches just so I can win? Well, of course, Skelebeard said, frowning in confusion. It's only gentlemanly to let a lady win a friendly game. That's why we keep you out of the competitive bracket. That's not gentlemanly, Skelebeard, I said slowly, because if he was going to treat me like a dumb child, then I was going to give it right back. That's unsportsmanlike, and it's incredibly disrespectful to an opponent when you throw a game. Nonsense! Ladies need a gentle touch. They can't handle the real competition of a man's game like Magic, Skelebeard insisted, it starting to get upset. That's why us real competitors ordered the lowly grunts to entertain you while we played. Entertain me? I asked. I didn't need to be entertained. I just wanted to play like everyone else. I don't need special treatment just because I'm a girl. I'm done with you and your stupid club. You and your buddies were so worried about leaving if I lost. Screw you. I don't need your stupid club. I'm never going back again, and I'm telling every girl I know about your little scheme. No one is going to want to join, and then where will you be? You're acting hysterical, he said, glaring down at me angrily. He grabbed my arm and started to drag me towards the club room. Now get over your tantrum and come along, or we're going to be late. Now, as I mentioned, I was a little thing when I was young. I'm still barely scraping average in any physical measure as an adult, but back in the day, I was an absolute mouse. But that didn't mean I was weak. I come from a long line of hockey players, and you don't grow up in a house like that without learning to hold your own. And this kid had just broken the one rule that always started a fight. Keep your hands to yourself unless you want to get hit. Remember folks, ladies don't start fights, but they can finish them. When this stringy idiot yanked on my arm, I pried his fingers off me like I had hands of steel. I twisted his arm around his back and bent his fingers back until he squealed like a pig. Then I kicked his bottom so he fell forward and he bolted in the other direction down the hall towards the school's exit. I heard him get up and call after me, his footfalls chasing after me, but I didn't look back. I didn't want him to see the furious tears running down my face. Listen, I hate feeling weak and I don't cry, but I was 12 and I just found out that someone I considered a close friend didn't even consider me on the same level of personhood as him. That's a rough blow when you're 12. Now, as I said before, I wasn't into sports, but that didn't mean I was out of shape. All of my family were athletes, and they treated working out as a family bonding activity, especially family runs at the track. I was a very quick kid, so I easily outpaced Skelebeard when he chased me out of the school. I could have stopped there, gotten on my bus, and headed home, and that would be the end of it. But this guy was mad, and he'd already put his hands on me. I didn't feel safe doing that, so I did the most logical thing to do at this time, and I ran to my brothers. I knew for a fact that my brothers would be the ice rink for club hockey right then, so I sprinted off campus and ran at full tilt for the 10 minutes it took to get there. I was out of breath when I got there, but I was so high on adrenaline that I barely noticed. I knew I had outrun Skelebeard, but what if he still came after me? I needed some protection. I ran to the ice and began pounding frantically on the glass, getting my younger brothers, the goalies, attention. I must have looked quite in fright because the coach blew his whistle and came over with both my brothers to see what was up. I sobbed through the whole thing, and the player who had been with me at lunch, a winger, gotta love him, corroborated my story, and everyone was pretty pissed. I explained that I didn't feel safe, but I didn't want to bother my siblings or my parents by making leave things early to come get me. The coach understood and surprisingly had a very good solution. He had all the hockey players go back to running warm-ups and walked me over to the rental desk. After confirming that yes, I knew how to skate, he rented me a pair of figure skates. Then he led me through the door to the other end of the locker rooms and led to the second rink in the arena, where the figure skating club was holding a lesson. He introduced me to the club supervisor and explained the situation. She was very nice about the whole thing and invited me to join their practice. I had a lot of fun, and the kids there, both boys and girls at the time, were very welcoming, more and willing to correct me when I was wrong. I actually had a basic spin down by the end of the practice, and it felt like I accomplished something. We took a water and a snack break about halfway through, and I explained what had brought me to their practice that day, and I was assured by the girls that by tomorrow morning not a single female in the whole school would go within 10 feet of the Magic Club. The only thing I had seen that spreads faster than cold is gossip. Never doubt the pettiness of middle school girls. All in all, the figure skating club was a great experience, and I agreed to come back next week. I went home with my brother's carpool. Someone had called their mom ahead of time, so the car met us at the rink instead of at the school. I explained the whole situation to my mom under the scrutiny of all three of my siblings so I wouldn't downplay it, and she agreed that not going back to the Magic Club was a good plan. I think she might have called the school to report it, but I'm not sure. She had my sister drop us off at school the next few days and got me a pair of starter figure skates when she went back to get my brothers sharpened. She told me she didn't care if I didn't compete, even if I just sat in the penalty box and read a book, or if I did circles around the ice till it was time to go. She wanted me to stay in the figure skating club for the time being. I was fine with it, to be honest. Figure skating club was fine, and I was solidly middle of the pack as far as skill went after a week or so. The kids were nice. One of the boys even played Yu-Gi-Oh with me when I mentioned I liked it. I had built a nice little network of friends by the end of the quarter, and I was perfectly happy. Skelebeard, however, was not. Like I said, the speed of gossip is supersonic, and everyone knew what he had done. He was already a kind of social pariah, and it was just dirty icing on the cake. The Magic Club was soon disbanded, and no one would even sit at the same table as this kid. No other club wanted to take him, with the rumors about him attacking me floating around, and the eerie of both the hockey team and the figure skating club simmering just under the surface. No one wants to mess with people with easy access to knife shoes. Skelebeard's social life was essentially over. He, of course, blamed me for this, but tough titties, my dude. I got a note put in my student file not to pair me with him in any capacity, whether that be school projects or gym, and the school was pretty fine with complying, and that considering my academic achievements put me in a different learning bracket than him. By the end of middle school, I was known as the most outgoing geek around. Weird for sure, but fun to hang with. I entered high school with a solid group of friends and a lot of new club prospects. Skelebeard transferred to an all-boys Catholic school. That's what you get, ya boy. So that's how I started and dropped Magic. I've tried to pick it up a few times since then, but it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth every time. I did get really good at Yu-Gi-Oh though. I was still competitive in college. I placed top 8 at regionals, and a few times it was great. It's the source of a great many more Neckbeard stories. I did have one more run-in with Skelebeard in high school, but that's a story for another time. Okay, I want to say that is probably the longest story I have ever covered on my entire channel. If you have any more of those Yu-Gi-Oh! Neckbeard stories, I would love to hear about them. Like, seriously, I'm interested, and I'm thinking for a second that your name sounded familiar. It's because that was that casual versus competitive story that I covered a little while back. I'm glad that he's no longer bothering me anymore, and hopefully he isn't bothering anybody else, but you know how neckbeards are. And that is going to have to be it for the video. If you would like what you had seen, be sure to like the video, comment down below what you liked about the video. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, turn on them notifications, and check out the Discord in the link down below. I will be sure to see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye.